Hello, good evening, or good afternoon, and welcome to 1964 of the series. Today we will, for a couple of episodes, go through a sort of article of a book, a couple of books written by David Mcneill. And here is Gesture and Thought. Thought. And I'll read the abstract, both a synopsis and extension of gesture and thought. The present essay explores how gestures and language work together in a dialectic. Dialectic. In this analysis, the purpose of gesture is to fuel and propel thought and speech. Speech. A case study illustrates the dependence of verbal thought on context and how it functions. It functions. Problems for computational modeling, the presence and absence of gesture morphemes, and speculation on how an imagery language dialectic evolved are also provided. Dialectic. Gesture and Thought, a book of the same title as this essay, presents a new conception of language. Language as an imagery language dialectic, in which the role of gestures is to provide imagery for the dialectic. Dialectic. Gestures is an integral component of language in this conception, not merely an accompaniment or an ornament. Ornament. Supplement. Ornament. Such gestures are synchronous and co-expressive with speech, not redundant, and not signs, salutes, or emblems. They are frequent. About 90% of spoken utterances in descriptive discourse are accompanied by them. 90%. 90%. They synchronize with speech at the point where speech and gesture co-expressively embody a single underlying meaning, a meaning that is the point of highest communicative dynamism at the moment of speaking. Dynamism. A host of phenomena testify to a tight bond to the point of fusion of the speech gesture combination. Speech gesture combination. It is one singular unit. It is a combination. What can I do? Well, I combine to make one thing. The synchrony of speech forms and gestures creates the conditions for an imagery language dialectic. 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 A dialectic implies a conflict or opposition of some kind. Opposition. And resolution of the conflict through further change or development. Development. The synchronous presence of unlike modes of cognition, imagery, and language, co-expressive of the same underlying thought unit, sets up an unstable confrontation of opposites. It is this very instability that fuels thinking for speaking as it seeks resolution. Instability is an essential feature of the dialectic and is key to the dynamic dimension. Dynamic dimension. The concept of an imagery language dialectic extends a concept initiated by Vygotsky in the 30s. Vygotsky in the 30s, in the 30s. This new conception also recaptures an insight lost for almost a century, that language requires two simultaneous modes of thought. And what Saussure in recently discovered notes composed around 1910 termed the double essence of language. Writing about the same time, Wundt writing about the same time, had a similar insight in this famous passage. From a psychological point of view, the sentence is both a simultaneous and sequential structures. Both. Wholeness and part. Holy moly. It is simultaneous. At each moment it is present in consciousness as a totality, even though the individual subordinate element may occasionally disappear from it. It is sequential because the configuration changes from moment to moment in its cognitive condition as individual constituents move into focus of attention and out again, one after another, another. Gesture and thought focuses on the real-time actualization of thought and language regarding language multimodally and in context its dynamic dimension. Dynamic. On the dynamic dimension, language appears to be a process. Not an object. Not an object. On the cross-cutting static dimension, it looks to be an object, but not a process. In fact, both dimensions must be considered as both are indispensable to a full theoretical explication of utterances. Utterances. An important question is how they combine in real-time utterances. Real-time utterances. Imagery. Imagery as intended here is a symbolic carrier that lacks duality of patterning. To use Charles Hockett's term for one of the design features of language, imagery lacks this. It is a symbolic form determined by meaning, not by a system of form contrast or standards of good form. Imagery is actional as well as visuospatial. It is also non-photographic, since the form of the image is driven by meaning, not by external simulation, or not only this. And metaphor. Thanks to metaphoricity, imagery is not restricted to concrete references. Metaphoricity in gesture is a fundamental property, and it is not mere ornamentation. It expands imagery to encompass abstract meaning in dialectic with linguistic form. A famous example is the conduit metaphor, which appears in such purely verbal uses as there was a lot in that book. The image being the meaning is a substance, and the book is a container. Container. A conduit metaphor in gesture is the palm up open hand, the pois, described by Cornelia Miller, where the palm holds or contains some discursive substance.
Discursive substance.
Via pois, totally abstract content can, as imagery, dialectically oppose co-expressive material, expressive linguistic material. An example from a cartoon narration is a speaker saying, and the next scene is abstract content, and at the same time making a pois. The metaphor in gesture only, a frequent asymmetry. But is the recurring gesture imagery in the pois the beginning of a gesture morphology? Some gestures, as the Napolitan one described by Camden, seems clearly structured as morphologies. But what are metaphors like pois? As explained, the imagery component of a dialectic lacks duality of the patterning, whereas a morphology, in its usual definition, is exactly the sort of thing to which duality of patterning applies. Applies. The puzzle arises because in the case of pois and other variants of the conduit, there is regulation of form
Or
by the metaphor itself. There is a container or surface into which substance goes. Is this form requirement morphemic?
morphine.
Morphemic.
Morphine.
Morphemic.
I want morphine.
The key question is whether the form of gesture arises only from significance, thinking of the structure of the story and using the conduit metaphor. I construe the next scene as a container, or is also structured on the level of form. Qua form.
Qua.
Walk, walk,
Walk,
walk.
walk.
In the Pui case, it appears that the metaphor is all that is required. Occam's razor applies. There is no warrant for a further hypothesis of form regulation beyond the metaphor. Beyond the metaphor. Further evidence against a morphology of gesture in these situations is that when gestures recur in cartoon narrations, there is no ritualization or streamlining. This is true not only of Puoi,
Oh.
but all sorts of iconic depiction of story characters and other situations. Gesture recurrences take place because the same imagery arises in much the same way each time. Streamlining, however, requires more. It demands the linking of the recurrences into a system of some sort. Absent this, recurrences are just imagery in more or less the same form time after time. It is possible, nonetheless, to induce something like a true gesture morphology by breaking apart the gesture speech combination. Combination!
Combination. Da, da, da.
By outlawing speech.
Outlawing speech. Ouch, ouch, ouch.
Oh dear, oh
Police,
dear.
police, police, police.
Getting speakers to recount a tale without words, using gestures alone. Standardized forms of gesture emerge spontaneously. For example, in a non-verbal rendition of the Snow White story, the king and queen signs had stable forms, and the contrast between them appeared on their first appearance. The king sign was initially made with a two-handed jagged encirclement of the head, the crown, followed directly by a bracing of arms at the side. The queen side sign was made with a same crown, but with two hands cupped upwards for breasts. Breast.
Breasts.
Breasts. The gestures therefore immediately contrasted, hooray! They underwent extensive streamlining.
Streamlining stream.
The, the crown ultimately became a flick. Oh no.
Streamlining.
Of a single hand oriented toward, but not necessarily at the head. The breast or muscle different orientations of one or both hands. Palm towards chest for king, palm up for queen. Oh! The crown and flat-chested versus breast features never disappeared during some 70 recurrences.
70.
Ritualization thus took place and preserved all the significant form contrast. In other words, absence of speech was compensated for by a gesture morphology. However, with speech present, there is no such pressure and system of form contrasts for gestures does not arise. Instead, there is an instantaneous combination of unlike semiotic modalities.
Modalities.
Three, a specific gesture type. The semiotic combinations are summarized in what I once termed Kendon's continuum, named after continua. Spontaneous gesticulation mode, language slotted mode, pantomime mode 2, emblems, and signs. Signs. Mode 1, unwitting gestures. Mode 2, gestures intended as symbols. Due to S. Duncan. As one goes from gesticulation to sign language. 1, the obligatory presence of speech declines. Language-like properties increase. Morphemic features. 3, socially regulated signs replace spontaneously generated form meaning
Dash.
pairs.
Yes.
Gesticulation is the type of gesture analyzed in depth here. Language slotted gestures are also gesticulations, but replace speech rather than synchronize with it. He goes gesture, the gesture timed to coincide with a vacant grammatical slot. Pantomime is dumb show and occurs without speech at all. An emblem is a culturally established morpheme or a semi-morpheme because it does not usually have combinatoric potential, such as the OK sign and others, and occurs with or without speech. And sign languages are socially constituted languages and do not combine with speech. Even though gesticulation, thereafter gesture, is only one point on the continuum in storytelling, living space descriptions, academic discourse, including prepared lectures, and conversations, the overwhelming gesture type is gesticulation, commonly 99%, if not totally. The propensity to adopt conventionalized emblems or quotable gestures varies across cultures. In the genres listed among North American speakers, at least they are overwhelmingly absent. Absent. As the mode 1, mode 2 distinction indicates, gesticulation alone are unwitting, not intended as symbols. They are integrated with linguistic content into growth points and appear to the speaker to be an unbroken package of semiosis with it. And there I put a stop. Semiosis with it.
Semiosis.
Semiosis, 1964.
Page 4.
Page 4. Very good. The last thing we saw here is a development if we don't have speech or somebody tried to imitate Snow White. By time or almost directly, the gestures turn into morphemes. They start to have the shape of words. They become emblematic. So in the end, this one meant king and this meant queen, or this was king and
No, vice versa.
Yeah, this was king. No, this was queen and this was king. But in 99% of the cases, a gesture or gesticulation is a totality of a whole sentence, so to speak, or what is mentioned. The pois is a chose container. We can see on page, let's see here. It's a conduit metaphor. And it does not work morphomatically. It works as a totality in once. So I say the whole sentence holding it up is up the whole time or only for an instance. But there was a lot in that book. I say, and I hold it in front of me for a second. This means the whole of the sentence. So the point here is that we both have linearity in the sense that it is in different parts, like words, coming like dots. There was a lot in this book, whereas the palm directly shows everything at once instance. Very hard. So the pois, the hand, in this book, there are a lot of things. When I say in this book, there is a lot of things, me saying that there are a lot of things is linear.
Can you put the big screen?
Hmm?
Big screen. You are only apparently small, I think.
Okay, I can put them next to each other.
Ah, good. Excellent.
In this book, there are a lot of things, and it works like morphemes, it works linearly, it is in time, extended, fragmented, it's morphomatic. Each word has their own life, so to speak, whereas the sign is holistic. It's not emblematic in this case when it's together with language. It gives the whole meaning at once. And this is the container gesture. That's something, we recognize this from Lakoff Johnson, I remember now. So from one side, language appears to be a process, but from another side, it looks like an object. So a sentence, the claim of Mcneill is, or Wundt and also Lakoff Johnson, a sentence is both a simultaneous and a sequential structure. So it points to a holism in meaning, where our gestures, as we used to think, are just adornments or sort of a supplement to the speaking live language, where the live language contains all the meaning from the inside of the head, and gestures are just ornamentation. They are together. both of them at the same time, one sequential and the other one instantaneous or simultaneous. And to further explain the whole thing, it's also a story about Snow White, an experiment. But there is no spoken language. And that makes the signs quite quickly turn into morphemes. They become sequential. For me, the best example of realizing that is to think about a mime. He actually uses his hands, his body as words to say things. And this is why we like a mime, because they actually speak to us. They're not being that quiet. But of course, for a mime, everything is sequential. The mime is lacking this wholeness picture, this wholeness aspect of everything, where everything comes together at one time. In a way, it's a bit like these sequential things are actually, morphemes are sort of atoms. They are atomized, they are singular, they can be put together in different ways, so you can change what you think is the meaning. Whereas the gesture cannot be divided. It doesn't have divisions. You cannot part it. It is just one thing. It is holistic, and the other one is singularistic or emblematic, as it's called here. It's a sign for something else. This could never ever be a sign for something else. It's in itself enough, whereas this could be perceived as pointing to something. But I think this together is a nice complementarity, and it's a bit like the two hemispheres coming together in a way. So when you have both, you are more in the right mood, so to speak. You understand that there is a combinatory important thing. One also takes time, and this one, it can be shown quite quickly. It can be there the whole time. But you also see it's necessary for thinking. This is the second point, which I haven't reached into, the more Barbara Tversky point. Without this sign, there is an impossibility to think of a container. So the conduit metaphor is also in the hand, not only in the words. And this is, of course, an extension of what Lakoff Johnson said, into the gesture side of hands. And for everybody who thinks we need to use the hands, obviously, no, they hardly need to be present. But when you use a conduit metaphor, there would be a reaction in your motor cortex for that conduit metaphor. Or you can just pull it in a way that cannot even be registered by eye, but it will still be there, always. And that's why he said 99% of the cases, if not all is the most probable, but that needs to be proven yet. Kalle, maybe you have some comments? I will put the text on the screen again.
Come closer to the microphone, perhaps.
Yeah, you're more than welcome. Come join. You can put here. There you go.
I liked, let me see, go to the first page. Yeah, no, this was first page. Let's go to first page. So I like this expression, unstable or confrontational opposites.
Yeah.
Because we are speaking much about this.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
more
yeah,
in
yeah,
language.
yeah. I thought you would like that.
Because we Westerners, we usually prefer very stable opposites. We like to put here is a man, here is a woman, etc., etc. But just to so to say break up these things. And let me go to next page. About saussure. So it's important to note that I read a paper about Derrida. There, this author who was writing about Derrida pointed out that Derrida didn't have complete understanding of saussure. Why so? Because much material was not published at the time of Derrida. And here we have the same problem, or the same thing. We have to, the keyword is recently. So Derrida, it was not Derrida's fault. The material wasn't published. And it's easy, we have been much poking fun of saussure. But here he says actually something intelligent for once. So the interesting thing that he says is the sentence is both a simultaneous and a sequential structure.
Yes, yes.
So he has got something here. So here you can put S for saussure and simultaneous. So that is a way of remembering his point here. What else? Yes, you said something about the morphemes. Let me see.
Yeah, the morphemes are a bit like atoms. Words are morphemes. So they can be put in different directions and before, after, in linearity and so on. And they get the impression they are repeatable and also that there is a sort of timeline. Whereas the poor is impossible to take apart. It's the whole sentence, the whole meaning. It could be a whole book. But usually it's a sentence. It's holistic and it also brings, not in this as far as we read here, but just to give you a hint, it also brings in the idea of the ontogenesis of language, how it started, the very start.
Let's define poor. So in this case, it symbolized, so to say, the book or the contents of a book.
That there is a container, and there's a lot of things in a book, and you use this at the same time.
So you can show it. So it's let me see. Show your hand. So
Okay. Yeah.
So that is the so
the
that
poor.
So that symbolizes content.
Yes, content in something.
Okay.
Something, I think it was named or baptized by Coach Johnson as the conduit metaphor. I'm not sure. It's been around for a long time.
Okay. Since we have the medium sticky, can you put it? No. Okay. Now me. Okay. So let us try to reason. So Mcneill's point with is poor. So that stands for content. You could be speaking about, say, anything. Okay,
There's a lot of people in the house. I have a lot of ideas in my head.
And you use more or less the same gesture for everything. symbolizing content in concrete or metaphoric way.
Yeah,
So that's
yeah,
the
both, or
Mm.
on a scale there. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
But if I understand correctly, so there is, let's say, this standing for okay or approval, but this would be in contrast to a normal spoken language. This is not like morphemes in language. Let's say this would symbolize okay, I suppose. But is there not what do you call it, equivalence between this and okay? That's, I don't know if this is his point, or I understood you differently. You said that there is not really equivalence between this and okay, if I say it with words.
No, it's a bit of difference, but the sign you're showing now is more emblematic. It's more like a token.
Okay.
But of course, it's not more phonetic, but it's going in the emblematic way then a bit. But it's still going to have different holistic meaning. Because if you say something to me, and that actually, when you speak to a Spanish person, that can actually come somewhere at some point. And they would turn the whole sentence into something more holistic, so to speak. But if you replace what you say with only the token, it will be only emblematic. It will mean exactly okay and nothing else.
Yeah, but I would like actually question that, because when I say so this,
Yeah,
okay, we know that it means okay,
Yeah.
more or less. But it's also the round, it implements also the O of okay, the first letter.
I didn't think of that. Does it?
I would say, why not? Okay, oh, okay.
Maybe, yeah.
Well,
But where's the K?
No, K is eliminated for the sake of. Perhaps you have it here. I don't know. I don't know. How would you show okay with your fingers? Would you show this, or how would you?
I would do this.
Okay. But what would this mean?
Good or something like that.
Good. That yes. So this was not
nice,
even
good.
correct. Good. Good. Yes.
In German, it means zero. Nothing.
Yes. Nothing.
And I think okay, the word was a chap in the First World War. He was from America, and his name was something like Oscar Klein. And when he said that something was functional, I think it was like wagons in the railway, he put his signature on them. So an O and a K. And after that, the expression started slowly. So that's the genesis of the okay thing.
So it's almost linguistic, since his signature, so to say.
Yeah, his signature become linguistic.
But it also works with okay, English, okay, but it's the original okay. Is it Oscar Klein?
Yeah. I think 99% of the people who saw the okay sign in the First World War didn't know he wrote it, but they know what it meant. It meant that something was approved of.
Yes. Perhaps we should round up there.
Yeah. I just
I
going to
could-
finish up. This is like bringing the wave and the particle in together. So you have simultaneity, and you also have sequentiality at the same time. So both are equally present. And I say thank you very much, Kalle Lundahl, for your questions. Thank you everyone for looking in. Have a beautiful afternoon, morning, or day. Bye bye for now.